Ah, there we go. I see it. So good evening and welcome. I am officially calling the Council for Minnesotans of African Heritage full council meeting to order. It is 6:04 and so happy to see everybody's lovely faces on this cold evening. Looks like we have a couple of cold evenings. Before we get into the adoption of the meeting agenda, I do have two edits that we need to add. One is we need to add roll call. And then the other item that we need to add is welcome to our new policy director, Theo. So if I can have a motion for us to edit the agenda, and then I'll call for a second motion for us to adopt the agenda.
I move for motion to edit the agenda.
Is there a second?
I second, Andre.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you so much. Shakir, if you're able, if you can go ahead and roll call.
Sure. Chair Hughes,
Present.
Vice Chair Doe,
Present.
Councilmember Dukes,
Present.
Councilmember Crawford,
Present.
Councilmember Busa,
Present.
Councilmember Mullins,
Present.
Councilmember Nandi.
Present.
And that looks to be all the council members.
Representative Thompson just joined too, so I don't know if you want to call
Okay.
him.
Representative Thompson,
I don't know if he's logged.
oh, I don't see his audio up.
Okay, so he might not have audio. So awesome, we are all here. If I can have a motion to adopt the meeting agenda.
So move.
Is there a second?
I second again.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. So the only consent agenda item, as you recall, and I'm kind of repeating this just because there's a couple of council members that haven't been on, and then also new staff. But if you recall, I moved to a consent agenda probably, I don't know, towards the end of last year. And so what we had opted to do to, any items that we could just call for one motion would go under this bucket. And right now, the only consent agenda item that we have is the approval of the minutes. So hopefully everybody has had a chance to look at the minutes. I took a peek at them. I didn't see any edits. Did anybody else see any edits before we move to adopt the consent agenda item? All right, I'll take silence as we're good. So if I can have a so approve the consent agenda. So I see two people so who moved first? Andre and then.
I defer.
You did not, Andre.
So we'll do this. Mullins moved. Dukes second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any abstentions? And anybody opposed? All right, motion carries. So the next agenda item that we added is we want to introduce and welcome our new policy and legislative director, Theo. And Theo, if you could just give us a quick introduction, who you are, and Theo Rose, let me just for the record so everybody knows his last name, Theo Rose. And then if you could just give us a quick introduction of who you are, and then maybe just some quick background of what you did before you came to the council.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. My name is Theo Rose. I'm the new Legislative and Policy Director at the Council. I'm very, very happy to be here. Very happy to have joined the Council towards the end of January. And my background previously, I spent a long-term background in policy research. I worked previously in Washington, D.C. in the early part of my career doing public policy research and media relations for an institute in DC that's very grassroots oriented in its approach to policy change and advocacy. So I've long ties with that network of organizations, and more recently I spent a lot of time in academia. My work has been mostly in research and teaching on international human rights issues and thinking about the local and the global human rights challenges both at home and abroad. And so that's what sort of has led me to CMAH and to the good work that you guys do here. So yeah, that's my background. I mean, my teaching, a core of it is in African and African American studies. And so that's also a core part of my research and teaching background. So that's a little bit about me. Thank you.
Thank you. We are so excited that you're here. Let me just tell you. So we're finally fully staffed. We kind of had some transition happening. So it is really nice to be back in a full staff, especially now that we're in session. So I just wanted to add that piece as well. So moving down the agenda, we are right on target almost. So financial report, I see how freely you are on. And I know you missed your cue from the executive meeting. Do you want Shakira to go over the financials?
Yes, please.
Okay, so Shakira, if you can pull up the financials, and if you can just cover, kind of reiterate what you did last week at the executive council meeting.
Sure, everyone. Let's pull that. Okay, can you see my screen all right?
Yep, we can.
Awesome. Okay, so as you can see, the council doesn't have any negative numbers, so nothing has been overly expended that we did not obligate for. We still have $73,582.22 in unobligated funds that need to be expended before the end of the fiscal year. So this bottom number right here needs to go away before June 30th, which is the end of our fiscal year. You'll see that we do have quite a bit in there. That is because we have a few things that we haven't been able to pay for. One of instance of that is we have $4,200 in open funds for refreshments for council meetings. So that money isn't going to be expunged at all because we're not meeting in person because of COVID. Another example of some things that are in there that haven't gone through yet. Our annual report costs for printing hasn't gone through yet. Our annual report costs, final payment for Nika Creative for creating the annual report has not gone in there yet. And we also have a few credits coming from Minute that'll make that a little bit higher, but it's just mainly because of COVID, we've been able to expend things the way that we would typically do it. Any questions?
Once those expenditures come through, what are we looking at? Because I know it's still not going to take us down that much more than what we're seeing.
No, so we're looking at, with all of the things that actually like expunge, we're looking at closer to about 62.
Okay.
That's what we're looking at that we're going to need to expunge. I know there was talk about doing access funds, of course, which I'm sure Linda will talk about later to kind of help with those funds. But nothing major has gone through yet. They're still pretty pending as far as the higher dollar amounts for contractors.
Council members, do you all have any questions in reference to this? And just kind of a reminder, we're always going to see that majority of the costs are going to come from salaries because we're not really a program-driven entity like some of the other agencies possibly could be. So we're not like a DHS, where they do run, multiple programs. So that's where you're seeing a majority of our dollars are heavy on the salary end of things. And besides what we have contracted out as far as services are concerned, we still contract with Reggie Evans, for those that may not know. And this is when we do any type of public comment. He's kind of our communications person because we do not have a communications staffer. He usually is the one that helps when we do statements. So either if I do a statement or Linda does a statement as the executive director, we still have services with him until the end of the fiscal year.
Madam Chair, is there any allotment or carryover due to COVID that we're able to extend having that money on the books? And second question, are we able to allot any donations to organizations that are helping our folks at this time? And I'll pause.
Yeah, and that was one of the things so I know Linda had some idea. When Linda gives her report, I know that there are some ideas that they have about expending the dollars. And that is also a more in-depth question or conversation, I should say, that the executive council talked about, the executive team talked about last week. I was going to say 2 weeks ago, but that literally was just last week, that we had conversations about to say, what could we do with that? And possibly that may be one of the items. One of the hesitations I'll say around that, as we all know, is we're not a philanthropic organization. That's not typically what we're known for, is being able to, fund any type of activities outside of what we're doing. And I know we were able to do that last biennium, and it looks like we may end up doing that again. So I think that does bode for a conversation that as we're getting down, the months coming to a close. I mean, we're talking 4 months away. June will be here quickly, and we definitely don't want to see this large amount and then not be able to help our community. So, I mean, you bring up a great point, Carl, but I think that does bode for a conversation.
Mm-hmm. Madam Chair, would you like for me to address this question right now, or do you want to wait?
You can address some of it, and then I know you're going to go more in depthly. So Carl, if you're okay with her going more in depthly when she gives her report, or she can respond now, you tell me.
Yes, I'm fine with when the report is given, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Any other questions from council members? And or our commissioners.
My only question is, I know Shakira said that with the minute credits that will be somewhere around 62, is that also taking out the payment that's due for the annual report that will be at 62?
So with the annual report, that money has already been encumbered, so it just hasn't gone through yet. So that, I believe, is reflected in the unobligated amount. So the amount, the other that's coming out, is going to be the day on the Hill costs that haven't been encumbered as far as when this report was ran. So that's why it's not showing in the unobligated amount being taken out of that, because when this report was ran, it hadn't been or hadn't been created.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions before we move on? All right, awesome. So we are moving into our special guests. And so again, kind of reiteration, this happened last year where literally from January all the way through December and into this January, we had opted to say, how can the council find out what some of our other agencies are doing? And so it was requested, and we moved upon it to ask certain commissioners from various agencies to come and share a little bit about their agency, and also how we can be of resource to them and their agency, and then vice versa. There could be some items that the council can be advantageous in helping, share out information to our constituents, which is basically the community. So I believe Commissioner Schowalter, I got it right, I believe he's going first, and then we're going to have Commissioner Roberts Davis. So we have Minnesota Management and Budget that is here, and we also have Department of Admin that is also here. So I am going to turn it over to the two of you, and y'all can tag team it however you want to do it.
Cool. Thank you. I've got a couple slides, if that's okay. I'll run through those. Is that okay?
Sure.
If I, okay. And happy to take questions or whatever. And you know, Alice, I don't know, how do you want to, or you could deliver my slides and I could deliver yours. You know. I mean, we could sort of keep it really fresh.
No, I'm terrible with numbers. You go right ahead.
All right, all right. Chris Kelly is also on, and I think has a slide deck that he'll be sharing. And while he does that, just again, I want to thank the council for inviting me and giving us a chance to sort of share a little bit about MNB and what we do. You know, the topic of our department and what we do is pretty darn easy because I've been working for most of my career at the state of Minnesota, and all of that was at this department, in whatever name we call it, depending on the year. MNB it's a fascinating place, and not a lot of people know about it. So I just think it is a great opportunity to share and explain a little bit about the place. I don't see the slides on the screen, so I'm just going to keep going because doggone it, there's a lot to cover. Because MNB really has a lot of different responsibilities. It is responsible for managing the state's payroll, the state's finances, the human resources, the employee insurance. We provide all the systems for daily operations, information, things like that. Now, I was loving looking at the budget report because when I first came to the state, like back in the 90s, that report was something I saw way back then. It was called the MFR, Manager's Financial Report. And it's like, oh my gosh, it's still there. That's so cool. The agency, you know, the scope of what we do is kind of crazy because, you know, we have about 260 employees and we serve the governor. We serve the legislature, 100 different state government entities, and the workforce of about 50,000 employees. That includes Minnesota State colleges and universities, and obviously the public. So, you know, some numbers always kind of make it a little bit more real. So there's about an $84 billion biennial budget that we develop and oversee. We manage about $8 billion in public debt, $2.4 billion in transactions. Every year we sell about $1 billion, $2 billion in bonds to investors or refinance. Our agency alone has about a $27 million operating budget with about $2.9 million in payments to vendors that we do on behalf of state entities. You know, that list just keeps on going. You know, but if I wake up in the middle of the night, it's because it's like I finally realized, oh my God, I really am responsible for like 19,000 job applications that are processed every month. Uh-oh, I'm not up to speed on all 19,000, like nowhere close. Or the 112,000 employee checks. You know, we rely on our staff, we rely on our teams and our processes to make sure that we really help people get things done and ultimately work through other state agencies so that we can help serve Minnesotans. A couple of the balancing things that we tend to do, you know, is working with labor unions. We oversee 9 different labor agreements with about 38,000 employees, and you know that budget process that we do, and we're working with agencies like Standard & Poor's and Fitch to get the states the best bond ratings that we possibly can. Those are the kinds of things that we do on a regular basis. But you know, in the end, I kind of wear a lot of different hats. And again, I can only wear those hats because we just got great people. And you know, we've been around for a long time and realized that, you know, it's not about, you know, getting in front of the camera. It's not about the limelight. It's about, you know, really responsibility and stewardship and responsiveness and really keeping the, you know, the soft heart and the hard head together to make decisions and figure out how you can get through things. So, you know, some of the titles you would normally think about that are in my role are Chief Accounting Officer, Chief Collective Bargaining person for the state, or a CFO, Chief Human Resources Management. I've got this little insurance program for about 50,000 people, so I run a little insurance plan called CGIP, or a human resources management. It's like, there's a lot of different roles and activities that go on in the department, and those are the things that ultimately we're trying to get done. The issues that come up are what has helped me be engaged with this organization. You see, I mentioned I had been with the state for a long time, and then I left. But I came back in part because it's a cool place. The issues that the state deals with on a regular basis are just always exactly why you get into public service. Some of the issues right now, and this is just like a short list of the things, but for our human resources team, think about some of the things that we're trying to grapple with right now. COVID-19 and the changes in the workplace. How do we come back to the office on a more regular basis? I mean, Alice, Commissioner, has found a way to get back in the office, but most of us are not all in the office. And so what happens, how are we going to do it when there's only 2 people in the elevator? How are we going to balance telecommuting along with in-person working? Those are really fascinating and I think really important things so that we can help meet our workers exactly where they're at. Equity and inclusion. It has been a passion and an issue for the state for years, and yet, we need to make better progress. And how do we incorporate equity and inclusion in our systems, in our processes, in our recruiting for new employees and retaining persons of color, underrepresented populations in our workforce? These are not going to happen by accident, because ultimately it's insightful management, but it's also labor dynamics. It's like, we know we're competing for talent. We've got an opportunity to represent Minnesotans, all Minnesotans, in our workforce, in our decisions. How do we get that done? Ultimately, there's going to be a lot of turnover. You think about the state workforce, it's older than the state on average. So we're also going to see a lot of retirements, employee retention challenges, because quite often, our employees are attractive to other employers, and they'll be competitive and get other jobs. So we've got a lot of interesting, I think, challenges coming ahead. Ultimately, it's developing the next generation of leaders, and that's kind of where we're at. One of the things that has changed since I was last at MMB is we've added in the office of the Chief Inclusion Officer. It's a role that is very specific. It is to create an inclusive environment that retains at least 75% of newly hired people of color, American Indians, people who have disabilities, and veterans. And so there's a lot of strategic design in this, a lot of effort, and fortunately, Chris Taylor can include them all in himself, along with his small team. But it's a great opportunity to embed in state agencies equity and organizational design principles and building intercultural skills, and ultimately get to more diverse leadership and inclusive leadership skills across the enterprise. One of the things that he's doing right now, and I just want to make sure you have an update on it, is that the One Minnesota Council will kick off 3 different subcommittees in the coming weeks. So you ask, what can we do? This is an area that I think working together is going to be really important, because the subcommittees are going to be focusing on enterprise-wide strategies for assessing and developing intercultural competence, diversifying leadership and building leadership behaviors, and ultimately identifying metrics and how to disaggregate data to track progress on inclusion and equity work. So we've got a lot of things going on. Every agency that you're having come in and present to the council has a liaison to this Office of Inclusion. So we're all going to be working through that. The group is going to meet to identify issues and identify barriers to inclusion and work at the agency level. But then together, there's going to be other projects. One will focus on language and terminology, and another will work on how to conduct an audit of diversity and equity, and work on inclusion trainings. And ultimately, we're trying to get to a gaps analysis, where we'll identify what are the skills that we have that are core, and where do we need to do more work to develop a more inclusive work environment. Ultimately, we're working on agency change plans, and that's going to, like all change plans, like all work plans, we'll have to have quarterly, monthly, detailed sort of steps on how do we move from here moving forward. I'm going to just shut up in 1 second, but I got to do just a couple more content pieces. Now get it. Budget process is next up. Just so you know, budget is oftentimes when you see MMB in the news, when you see my face, it's like, oh yeah, we're doing the budget, chief budget guy. It is a process that's kind of never ending. It keeps on going and going and going. We're in the middle of it right now, but since it's a circle, I never know what I get out of it. Legislative session, we just presented the governor's recommendations. Huge opportunity to really state a set of values, a set of vision. All the commissioners contributed to that. Ultimately, it's the governor and lieutenant governor who say, here's where I want to go. How do you get us there? And that's what we try to do. It's still going to be a set of negotiations and work ahead. But that is a key part of what we do. And it's also in the context of math. The last slide that I want to go through is just to point out that ultimately we still have to spend what we bring in and not more. So just like that MFR, that manager's financial report that the council was looking at, the state as a whole doesn't get to borrow money to fund its activities. It really just has to say, well, if we've got some money, can we spend it? If we don't have any money, we're going to have to come up with it somehow. We're going to have to cut back. We're going to have to raise more revenue. And those are the kinds of things that we ultimately have been doing. We'll get out there. Fortunately, the bad news of the pandemic, which really knocked us on our butt as a state, as a community, as a state revenue forecast, some of that's coming back, but I think it's still really underlying or understating, the challenges that are ahead for our many Minnesotans. What we've seen is that high-income organizations and corporations are doing just fine. High-income individuals have been doing fine. So we're still collecting our taxes, and our tax base is doing all right. But obviously, lots of people have been suffering under COVID. And so how do we make sure that we can sort of reflect and know that while our state budget's doing better, we don't forget the challenges that are ahead. And that's really where the governor built his budget about the recovery and moving past COVID and making sure that everyone has opportunities coming through this period in order to have opportunity to close education gaps, to having retain jobs, and ultimately just for our communities to stabilize and move forward. So that's where I'm at. That was a whirlwind tour, and I just really appreciate the chance to talk with the council. Happy to stay for questions, but I'll be quiet so I don't take up too much time. Thank you. But you're on mute right now, so I'll just keep on talking. No.
Sorry, look, I'm over here just talking. Thank you. Council members, are there any questions for the commissioner?
Yes,
I got a question.
Quick question.
Go ahead, Wayne.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Commissioner.
I was
for
like,
being with
you
us
should probably
here.
start sharing too.
We really appreciate your presence and the presentation. My question is around the $15 minimum wage that we're hearing about. What are your thoughts on that? How does that impact state employee, and what kind of spillover is expected in your work?
So are you talking about the federal potential federal change for a $15 minimum wage?
Yes.
Because I think that's going to be exciting. I mean, what's the potential spillovers? In Minnesota, it's going to have some impact. It's certainly going to help. And in many parts of the state, many jobs, the pay is still well under $15. I think that the challenge is going to be, really in the short term, is kind of recalibrating and making sure that, as that helps individual households, that we keep an eye on how do we continue supporting families, how do we continue building the economy, and continuing making opportunities available. I think there's a number of things that right now the federal government is looking at to make sure that households have stability, have an ability to make a livable wage. That is key. along with a lot of the stimulus dollars that are coming through. And I think the net result of it, to be honest, is what we're starting to see from our forecast, which is, that the GDP is going to grow. And that's ultimately good. It's good for our communities and, being parochial, it's good for the state budget as well, because more people will have just, I think, better opportunities. So it's kind of a whirlwind tour. I don't have a detailed analysis of the $15 minimum wage, but I know that in Minneapolis, St. Paul, we're making progress. And I think other states are actually going to see a lot more impact because our wage scales are already a little bit higher than you're going to see in a lot of other states.
Thank you.
This is Jude.
Oh, hold on, Jude. Andre, were you going to say something before?
Yes, Commissioner Schowalter, thank you so much. You mentioned earlier about the work that's happening around equity and inclusion. And you said part of the charge for that group would be to find out, what the barriers are. And I'm just curious to know if there are barriers that you are currently aware of in the system.
Great question. Absolutely. I mean, I think there's a number of them, and I think they're there, and they're like artificial. Do they really do what they're supposed to do? I think of things like our recruitment process, where you've got minimum quals that are not going to be applied or they're going to end up having disparate impacts on different populations. I think about our recruitment process and even just like how you find out about state jobs. I think there's basic things along with something I know Kristen Batson, our deputy commissioner, has been looking into, which is when we do reviews or when we assess people for jobs, how does intercultural competence show up? Is that actually a quality that we're looking for in our workforce? Well, the answer is yes. But does it show up as something that is just as valuable and counted in the process as, what degree you've got? No. So I think there's a lot of just really basic things about how employment and processes have gone through time that we need to really take a hard look at and start changing. And I know Kristen and our team are looking at that right now.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Jude.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. I have two questions. One is how does the African heritage community engage in the disaggregation of data to drill down to the issues that affect us? This is very important. And the second question is equity representation in the state human resource is still much elusive to the Black community, especially African immigrant community. What are the key initiatives and programs at your department that address this inequality, and how does our community support such initiatives?
Great questions. I'm not sure I'm going to give you a good enough answers to either of the questions. I'm going to try. On the disaggregation of data and getting better data and better understanding, one of the things that I've encountered and grappled with over and over again is both having sort of balancing the aggregation of data so that you've got, frankly, is that you collect data that doesn't seem obtrusive and invasive, and at the same time having information that's actionable and useful for decision making and systematic change. And so, I think what I've seen over and over again is that our data systems tend to aggregate. They don't tend to get down to the actionable level so that we understand in different communities, in different parts of the state, in different sort of situations, how things are different. And so you end up getting kind of an aggregate and average. And that's less actionable as a manager. It's less actionable as a policy person. That's why this council, why these conversations are really important, because frankly, I'm not sure we're ever going to have such great precise data but you have to have conversation. You have to have people who really understand it and can help us interpret what's going on. So that's, I think, the first part. I'd be welcome other ideas on how to do it better. But I know it's been a constant challenge. What are the policies going forward? If I remember, the second part was just like, what are the policies and issues in the budget process that would affect the economy and Black Americans better and move us forward? If that was kind of where you were, I'm trying to remember exactly what the gist of the second question was. So I'm sorry about that.
Okay, sorry, I was on mute. Yeah, the question was in terms of, it's pretty elusive to us, the Black community. So what are the key initiatives and programs in your department that address this inequality, and how does the community support such initiatives in terms of collaboration, just working with you to take you back to the community and let them know that these are possible things we can do to improve the gap.
There's a lot of different things I can point to in the budget that are trying to address it. I think, as we both know, there's not going to be a single thing that says, oh yeah, that's going to fix it. We're talking about a complex system of issues and interdependencies that one thing is not going to just like get us to nirvana. That said, a couple of things that are in the governor's recommendations that I think are really key. He and the lieutenant governor really grappled with the paid family medical leave, knowing full well that access to insurance, access to healthcare is not enjoyed across our entire population. And how do we make sure that everyone has leave and ability to sustain their families and take care of people when they're sick? I'm not going to tell you that I think we're this close to getting the Senate to pass it this year. We're not. Are we push it? Heck yeah. So that is like, how do you make sure you've got the building blocks on a broad basis so that everyone's got access to basic benefits that I know I've enjoyed my entire life? It's like, I think that's kind of the key. There's more micro strategies as well in the budget. But I think that would be one that I would put out front and center.
So there's two comments here in the chat that I'll just read. So one comes from Councilmember Crawford. He said, is there flexibility for employees of color and the new challenges that COVID-19 has created for families to work, to continue to work from home?
Yes. So certainly at the present time, the state as an employer has tried to make sure that we've got flexibility to allow persons of color, all of our employees, to have flexibility, because we know that families are under stress. Individuals are under stress. That bottom line, that we want to make sure our workforce has the opportunity to be as productive and healthy and together as possible. And so, telecommuting, COVID leave policies, accommodations, managers are instructed and know that we're trying to have that flexible workforce and work rules at this point in time. I think the challenge going ahead is that it's not going to be like, oh, on July 1, COVID's going to go away and we're going to all be, oh yeah, it's all good. It's not going to be. And so how, as an employer, do we continue to have those same flexibilities that the question suggests? I think we're up to it, but that's going to be the challenge of how to define that and sustain that.
Good. And then the other question that came up is, are the ethnic councils involved in the diversity and inclusion One Minnesota work?
There are, I think. I would be shocked if they're not, but I actually don't know for sure. I mean, we have all of our state agencies are included in it, but I'm not sure exactly the linkage and how they would be tied in, if they're in the work groups directly or not.
Okay.
I can check on that.
Sure. No, that'd be great. And then the last question, because I know we're almost out of time here, is what is the likelihood that smaller agencies like ours will have a budget reduction?
At this point in time, I'd like to say zero. I'd like to say nobody's ever going to have a budget reduction. I think, it's silly for me to ever sort of say, oh yeah, don't worry about it, because you should worry about it. At the end of the day, you should worry about it. You should make sure people understand the value, the importance of what you're doing, and as a result, make sure that the legislature represents that in the budget recommendations. So I'm going to say, yeah, worry about it. I don't think it's probably as much of a probability or a possibility as I would have said 4 months ago when we were staring a $5 billion budget hole straight in the face. We got a little over $1 billion and it's getting better. So, but nonetheless, I think, there's always going to be that tension about people and programs and what revenues we get. And, that's the balancing point that we all kind of have to struggle with.
Right. Well, Commissioner, thank you so much for sharing with us about MMB and just the various initiatives. And as always, SEMA is always happy to partner with other like agencies as long as we can move that needle. Closing those equity gaps is huge. So, but thank you for spending time with us. You're welcome to stay on, or I get it if dinner is ready for you. It's okay to politely excuse yourself.
Okay. Thank you so much. I really appreciate the invitation.
Absolutely. Thank you. I'm going to turn it over to Commissioner Roberts Davis, Commissioner of Department of Administration.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you. Thank you for having me here. I'm going to try for the first time to share my screen and see what happens.
Okay.
I'm not sure what you're seeing, though. Oh, probably don't want to see that. This is... Oh boy. I need tech assistance.
I was like, Shakira, you might want to help her walk through.
If you want, you can send the presentation over to me and I can share it.
Did you get the WebEx screen again, or?
No, now we're seeing a panda.
Okay, he's cute, isn't he?
He is cute.
He is cute.
Okay. Let me stop sharing that. So I really appreciate the opportunity to be here. I'll go ahead and get started while I try and muddle through this. This has been really a long time coming because for probably the last 12 months, I've been trying to get an opportunity to come and talk with you about the work that we do here at admin. But I've been redeployed working on COVID work. And so it's been really difficult to find an opportunity where the timing has been right for me to come and speak with all of you. So it's just been really great. And Chair Hughes, I appreciate the invitation. And a lot of you I consider friends. And so I'm really happy to be here. And I have one of my really talented team members, Twana Mullins, who sits on your council, who's here as well. And so any angry comments you can direct at Twana when I'm finished, if there are any. I am gonna really need some help here because I have really messed something up with my WebEx here. Not sure what to do at this point. So what I'm gonna do.
Email it over to me, I can present it for you. This is Shakira.
Okay. Shakira, let me do that. I'm sorry about this. I know we don't have a ton of time.
You're fine.
PDF it to. I started to email it to you earlier. I should have just gone on and done that. So at the Department of Administration, we have 25 unique divisions. And what I want to talk to you today about, what I think will be of most interest to you, is really 3 things that we do that impact directly communities of color. And that is the Procurement Technical Assistance Center, the Office of Enterprise, or the Office of Equity and Procurement, and then the Joint Disparity Study that we did in 2017 and the work that we continue to do to further the progress that we're making in this space. And so I think that all of those things, as I talk through this, you'll see the importance of that work for communities of color. I want to start, once Shakira gets that PowerPoint, with some really important statistics. Back in 2015, when I came here to the state of Minnesota, one of the things that I was tasked with was standing up the Office of Equity and Procurement. And I came here from Target Corporation, which is actually where I first worked with your executive director, Linda Sloan. And they had a tremendous supplier diversity program, and I was asked to translate some of that to the public sector and the work that we're doing here. Now, we had here in the state a program around targeted group businesses, but it had lain dormant for about 40 years. I mean, it was a program that was less than one full-time employee. They were doing as best they could, but it really wasn't a program that was active. It was more catch as catch can, and there wasn't any marketing being done around the benefits that this program had, and seeking out business owners and really matching opportunities to what could be done in the space. And so that's where we got started. So less than one full-time employee, no systems that were available for presenting information, and very, very small spend. Now, you'll remember back in 2015, there was a report that was done that said that Minnesota had the worst disparities in the nation, second only to Mississippi. And so at that point in time, we were able to start doing some really rudimentary data mining, and we found that we were spending with Black-owned businesses about $119,000 a year. Put that in context with the fact that we spend about, at that point in time, we were spending about $2 billion a year on government contracting just for the state of Minnesota. And so huge wake-up call, extremely embarrassing. That data had not ever been presented to us before in that way. And so we had a true call to action and some data to back it up. We got busy and started thinking about what we could do to move it forward. And so fast forward, if you could see the slide, you would see fast forwarding to the year 2020, we now have 12 full-time employees working in this space. We have 3 systems that we use in order to understand data better. And specifically with Black-owned businesses, our spend is a little close to $3 million. Now, certainly nothing to write home about, but some significant progress. And what it does signal to me is that we have a better understanding of what those levers are that we need to pull in order to make that meaningful progress. So again, in 2015, we started the Office of Equity and Procurement, adding 6 team members. And then in 2017, we added an additional 6.5 team members in a program called the Procurement Technical Assistance Center, which was a separate federally funded program that does work adjacent to that work. They work with federal, state, and local government contractors, and they give them a lot of business acumen, give them some tools that they need in order to do contracting with state, federal, and local government. And we brought them into the Department of Administration because they're so complementary to the work that we were trying to do with our targeted group businesses. One of the things that I want to be clear about when I'm talking about those spend dollars is that I'm talking about a really narrow piece of spend, and I'm talking about businesses that have gone through our certification process and businesses that are owned by women, minorities, veterans, people with substantial physical disabilities, and people who live in economically disadvantaged parts of the state. If they have not gone through our certification process, they might be a minority-owned business. We're not counting that spend. So we know that there's actually more diverse spend out there than that, but that is the only spend that I'm counting for the purposes of this conversation today. So thinking about how we move forward, the things that we focused on first were training for our internal team. We had more than 575 buyers who across the state are doing purchasing. We ensured that every single one of them had training on diversity and inclusion in procurement. In fact, we went so far to say that if you don't take this diversity and inclusion training, you will not get your credentials for purchasing. Effectively, you will not be able to do your job if you do not go through this training. And that was important to us because we wanted them to understand, A, the impact that they can have on diversity and inclusion, and B, the tools that were available to them so that they could be proponents of this work that we were doing. And so we did that in 2018, 2019, and every new buyer has to go through that training as well. We've increased the number of awards that go to businesses of color, and we've increased the number of vendor outreach events. And so in 2015, we had 5 outreach events, meaning we went to some sort of vendor fair or created some sort of vendor fair where we were meeting with vendors and talking to them about all of the opportunities to do business with the state. Today, we do more than 100 events a year, and some years it's 120 events, and that means that we are very active in the community. We are working with organizations like CMAH saying, hey, where are Black-owned businesses going to be? How can we be there? How can we tell them about doing business with the state? One of the things that happens to me frequently is that I run into people, and I will say honestly that we have a brand problem at this point, and we've earned it to some degree, right? I'll go to people and I'll say, have you thought about becoming a certified business with the state? Have you tried doing business with the state? And they say, oh man, I tried that. No, it wasn't about anything. And I say, well, what year was it? And they say, that was 1990. And I say, okay, stop. If you haven't tried to do business with the state since 2015, then you need to try again, because the program has completely changed. We put a lot of energy into making this an effective program and to making it something worth your time. And I think that people are starting to see that it is worth their time. So we're encouraging people to help us evangelize about the benefits of doing business with the state and how this program really is effective. And I always bury the lead, which is that all of this is free. Certification is free. All of the work that we do with businesses, counseling, outreach events, they're all free. So you may be wondering, how have we moved the dial? How have we increased the spend? A number of things that we based on talking to businesses and understanding what it is that they need from us in order to be more productive in working with the state. A number of things that we did, starting with changing our subcontracting goals. The first thing that we did was look at how are we goaling our direct contractors and ensuring that they are aggressive enough on how they're spending their money and how we're encouraging them to subcontract. And that was a huge win for us. The next thing that we heard from a lot of businesses is that access to capital is a tremendous barrier for them. And so we worked with MN, who you just heard from, to hardwire our payment system so that if you're a certified targeted group business, instead of getting paid in 30 days, you're now paid in 15 days, giving you faster access to capital, meaning that you can get back into the bidding game again and you can start on a new project much more soon than you would if you would not have that access to capital. We've pursued legislation that helps create equity. One of those things is a program that we call Equity Select. Public procurement is a different animal, and everything that we do here requires a competitive bid. Because we're working with taxpayer dollars, we want to make sure that everything is fair and that we're getting you, as the taxpayers, the lowest price possible, except when we're working with targeted group businesses. With this new procurement tool that we've created called Equity Select, up to $25,000, if we are working with a targeted group business, we can directly select a targeted group business, which allows us to ensure that those dollars are going directly into the hands of those targeted group businesses that we are trying to incentivize to do business with or to work with the state. This has been tremendously successful for us because the money is going directly where we want it to go. And it also is a great tool for our procurement people who are very busy, and they have the opportunity to expedite a process by using targeted group businesses. So it's become a real win-win for the state. What we are pursuing this year is an increase on Equity Select from 25,000 to 50,000, and that would be wonderful for us because then we can make even bigger contracts and we can build capacity for some of our smaller minority-owned businesses. The other thing that we've reinvigorated is sheltered markets. If we have at least 3 businesses that are working in a particular space, then we can wall off that contract and only allow targeted group businesses to compete. So for example, if I have a plumbing job that needs to be done and there are at least 3 plumbers that are able and available, I can only allow targeted group plumbers to bid on it and ensure that a targeted group business earns that award. So the importance of getting target group businesses certified becomes that much more important to us because we need at least 3 in order to leverage that legislation. And then the final thing that we did, not the final thing, but the final thing that I'll call out is that we increased the cap to $2 million for preferences, which for the longest time was only $1 million. And so we would only be able to spend up to a certain point before all of the benefits that we were able to give target group businesses expired. So we're excited about that. We've really leveraged our technology. I told you that we've got a lot of data that we're able to access now that we didn't have previously. And we've implemented a new tool called Tier 2 so that we're able to incorporate in our contracts with our direct suppliers requirements for them to purchase from minority-owned businesses as well. The benefit of that is that we can create a culture here where our vendors know that our expectation of them is that they're working with diverse businesses as well. And then we have a much larger reach than just the dollars that we're spending as the state. We can really create this culture where everyone is thinking about supplier diversity if they want to do business with the state. And so we're really excited about what the Tier 2 program is going to do for us as well. And then we launched a one certification portal, which, no kidding, is something that the community had been asking us for literally 40 years. There has been a city certification, there's been a state certification, and a federal certification. And these are not easy processes to go through because there is a benefit that you receive, a financial benefit for certification. So they ask a lot of questions and there's a lot of paperwork that you produce to become certified. We were able to work with all of those teams to come up with one certification process. You submit an application one time through a certification portal and zip, it goes to all 3 of those entities or just 2 of those entities or just 1 of those entities, however you want to certify yourself as a business. But it saves such an amount of time for these small business owners who'd be much more happy out selling or marketing or doing whatever it is they do than filling out paperwork. It's really created a lot of efficiency and impact for those vendors, and they're very, very happy that we've been able to come up with this one certification portal. So when we think about progress since 2015, when we had about $65 million in spend, we just got our numbers for 2020, and we are at about $120 million in spend with diverse-owned businesses. So essentially doubled our spend just by these policy changes and process changes. We're headed in the right direction with still a lot of work to do. We continue to think about how we can expand that. What can we do differently and better, and what other opportunities come for us? I think that going forward, we'll look at making a lot of the things that we've done bigger. Some of the agencies across the state and other partners that we've had, like Hennepin County, Ramsey County, City of St. Paul, are doing a lot of the things that we've done. Some of them are doing it better than us, quite frankly. They've taken our ideas and expanded on them, and we're happy for them that they've been able to do it. Some of them are doing equity select at $100,000, and we'd love to be able to play at that level. And so we'll continue to try and push the envelope to get to where they are as well. We've set a goal of 12% of our spend with targeted group businesses. We've not reached that goal yet. That's a really aggressive goal because our spend fluctuates each year. It can be as high as $3 million, but for us, $120 million when we started at 65 just 5 years ago is pretty phenomenal movement for such a large amount of spend. And we're quite pleased with that, but really want to see continued aggressive growth. So I think with that, I will probably pause because I feel like I've talked a lot. The last thing that I'll say is that in 2017, we did do a joint disparity study. There were a number of things that came out of that disparity study. We did the study not because we weren't sure that there were disparities in the state, but because that is the legal and statutory basis upon which we provide all of these programs as the state. No surprise, there were vast disparities between people of color and white-owned businesses in the state. And so we continue to offer these programs, but there were a number of recommendations that came out of it that we continue to work on. It's 2021, and we're still meeting monthly. And we're working on a new portal that will allow us to, let's see. We've already completed the certification portal, but there's a portal that will allow us to let anyone who wants to bid on state, federal, or local work go to one portal and find all of those opportunities in one place, which again would be a tremendous time saver for them instead of going to 9 different locations to see what's happening at the city of St. Paul, Minneapolis, or points in between. And so we're really proud that we're continuing to run down all of those different opportunities so that we can just make business better for small and targeted group businesses. And so I'll stop there and answer any questions you may have.
So what question, first of all, thank you, because I remember when that report came out in 2015, at the time I was working for Ramsey County. So I do remember that was a huge push for us to look at what the disparities were, and it hadn't been looked at. And so, you know, it shouldn't have been a surprise for some, but it was. So to know where you were and to see where, you know, where you are today, hats off, because I know it was not an easy task at all. And I think it really is a testament to when we talk about really moving the needle around equity and inclusion that, you know, our talk is matching our walk. So kudos to you and your team for that. I do want to open it up for questions, and I don't know if I was going to say, Commissioner Roberts Davis, you can stop sharing your screen so we can see everybody.
Do you still see a panda? I am so
sorry.
sorry.
A panda. No, that's okay. And
I don't know how.
That's okay.
Wow.
And then Shakira can just send the slides out. But yeah, it should just say stop sharing, I think, somewhere.
Okay, I'll keep looking.
We won't worry about it. But I do have a question. This comes from Councilmember Crawford. He says, as we look at the current disparities in our educational systems for the BIPOC community, how can we better close the gap for future business owners?
That is really a great question. Look at the disparities in our educational system. You know, this really does have to be a partnership. There's so many levels here that come into play. And what we need is a system that takes education to deed and deed to the Department of Administration. And we've started having those conversations between education and deed, and then deed and administration. But I don't know that we've had that conversation that goes all the way through. So DEED has a lot of great programs for grants and programs for startup businesses. And what we've told them is that when those are targeted group businesses, we really do want you to help get them stabilized and then throw them over the fence to us so that we can get them certified, we can get them in the pipeline, and then we can help give them opportunities to get matched up with government contracts, and we can really help them do some building of their capacity and grow those businesses. And we have businesses that have grown to the point that they've outgrown our program. They've just gotten too large and too successful.
No, that's good. The other thing that I would say too that probably would be helpful, we put out a newsletter, and so maybe the link for the one certification, you know, for folks that are interested in getting certified, if there's a link to that portal, then we can embed that and put that into the newsletter, and it goes out to several people that may not know that even exists, which I know some people do, but you know, we reach audiences that didn't know that. And so that would be great. You know, the greater that we can, you know, share that information, I think that would be better too.
Yeah. The other thing is that we do have a listing on our website of all targeted group businesses. And if there's ever an opportunity to hire a business, people should know that those are listed out there, and you should be going there first to find a business that qualifies for targeted group.
Perfect.
And when it comes to Equity Select, we have a lot of targeted group businesses that are using that as a marketing tool. They're going to our agencies saying, hey, I'm Equity Select eligible. I'm easy to work with. People are loving it.
Nope, that's good. And I know that's how we've been able to contract with some of our vendors is by using both of those. So that's good information. What other questions, if any, did the council have for Commissioner while she's still on the call?
Or Twana. Twana will answer questions too.
Yeah, there we go. Put Twana on the spot.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. This is Carl Crawford again. Are there programs, or is that a myth that people with background, can they still work for, are they still open to get funding through the state? If someone may have had a
say it one more time, Carl. Your volume is real low.
Oh. Okay, are there people that may have a criminal background, a fellow, are they able to qualify for this program?
So for people who have already created their own businesses, so they would be entrepreneurs. So that actually would not come into play at all here. And Twana probably knows through the certification process. I don't think that there are questions on there about whether or not you've had a conviction.
Good. Okay.
Twana?
You know,
she dropped off.
She dropped off. I just looked at that. Yes.
Yeah, but I can answer that because I went through the certification. There's none.
Perfect. That's what I thought.
Yeah. So my comment. Thank you, Commissioner, and nice to see you after months of waiting to hear from you. Yeah, you guys do a great job. I've been to your office multiple times, and there are many of people who work with you. With these great programs, how do we break it down to our community? When you go to inner cities, they don't even know, what that does, that they can get help. When they look at government, they just think about policies and taxes. So I know you said about up to 100 programs outreach in a year, but to make it simple so that people can really connect with that, especially if it's possible to work with local organizations and businesses who have pages and outreach to break it down. I think it's just that is a problem in spite of all the values that the admin creates.
Yeah. Thank you for the feedback. We do try and go to all different types of organizations to partner and talk about the work that we do. We advertise. We have procurement fairs all the time, talk about opportunities that exist just to get the word out so that people who may be business owners can find out how to engage with us. But we will continue to do that. That's really good feedback. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I guess my question I always ask is there anything that we can help with as you all continue to move your work forward?
Any interactions that you have with business owners, or anytime you're having people who own businesses that you're engaging with, we would love for you to invite us in or give them information about our services, again, which are completely free. The PTAC can give them a lot of business acumen, or if they're interested in starting a business, we can help them with all of those foundational learnings in order to get off on the right foot. That's really what we're here to do.
That's great. Well, Commissioner, thank you again so much. Probably the same thing. You're probably ready to get out the office and go home.
I'm good. No, I've been looking forward to this, so I'm glad to have the opportunity.
Yeah, no, thank you for sharing a lot of good information. And I definitely want to, kind of reiterate that we're here because we're partners. We're partners in this thing. And I definitely want us to be able to make sure that we have the links when we send out communication out to our constituents that do receive our newsletter, that they actually do see those links and that they can get signed up,
Yes.
be an Equity Select member and so forth, so that we can increase it even more as we go, further down the road. We doubled it. I'd love to see us triple it, quadruple it,
Yes.
in
Yes.
comparison to where we were before. So thank you so much for spending your time.
Yeah. Yes, I'm really sorry about the panda, but when you get the actual presentation, please do look through it. It's got some really great charts and graphs in there that you should spend some time with. I really would appreciate it if you did. So have a great evening.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Bye.
Okay, bye.
All right, so we are going to move on to community public comments. And I know we only have one community member on, Dr. Lawson. So I don't know if there's anything from her. Has anybody signed up, Shakira?
Not that I got, no.
Okay. Well, I will take that as a no, and I will move on. And so unfinished business. So a couple things, and these are kind of some quick items. So the executive committee met last week, and we talked about council bylaws, and Wayne and two other council members are going to get together and look at a couple of areas that we need to rethink through. One of the areas is thinking about sponsorships. That word has been thrown around, and we really want to make sure that in the bylaws, it's not either stagnating an executive director, I should say, or staff members of CMAH to be able to do what they should be doing, which is promote CMAH, participate in various events. The other thing that we were looking at is right now it does state that all contracts, doesn't matter the dollar amount, need to kind of get approved through us. And the executive committee had a conversation, and I think we want to have a deeper dive conversation, not today. But the folks that if you have an interest in the bylaws and looking at some of the language that we have, we want to make sure that we're submitting green language. What I mean by that is we're not putting language in there because of either previous practices or a particular person, but looking at how do we want to operate. And so if folks have an interest, definitely, I would say email Shakira. Wayne's going to be spearheading that project, but I just wanted to throw that out because it has been on our agenda item before, and just to let you know where we're sitting from that. Any questions in reference to that?
I just want to add my voice, council member, please, we can do this. So volunteer, just need two people to start their discussions so we can move it forward.
Yes, just two, because we don't want to go. And the reason why we're saying on these committees, we want to limit it to 3, because if we start adding more, then we end up being a quorum. So just so that you all know that. The other piece is, as you all recall, is we had received a grant for an oral history project, and then Shakir went on maternity leave, and then she's back. And so Shakir, if you can just kind of give a quick update of where we're at with the oral history project.
Sure. So with the oral history project, we got a grant, so we have the $10,000 to fund that. We do have a vendor in mind to help facilitate and do the interviews with past members and past executive directors as well. His name is Jeremiah Ellis, so he does Jeremiah Historicals is the company that he founded. He is a vendor of African Heritage, of course, so and he would go towards that. The program would be split up between funds for him to do the interviews, a transcription service, as well as prints of his transcriptions. If council members would like, I can certainly put up the budget breakdown if they're curious. Otherwise, I'll just keep it really high level.
Any questions about the project? All right, I'm gonna take silence as none.
Okay.
Thanks, Shakira. So we're gonna move into, and this is kind of gonna fall into staffing, but the 2021 legislative seats. So We do have, I think we still have him on here. Do we still have Representative John Thompson? I think he fell off. But we do have one seat that has been filled. So Representative Mohammed Noor is no longer serving and now has been replaced with Representative John Thompson. I know he was on earlier and then had to leave. But then we still are hopeful, fingers crossed, toes crossed, everything crossed, that we will actually have the rest of the legislative seats filled. So remember, we always have 2 representatives, 2 state reps, and both parties are typically represented, on the councils. So just wanted to let you know where we are with that. The Community Black History Month event, I am going to turn that over and the remaining items, honestly, to Linda.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the Black History Month event, we've been meeting. So it has been Councilmember Doe, Councilmember Usa, and then Councilmember Quentin is on that committee as well as our chair. So we did decide that we were going to do something that would focus on the area of building relationships between the African immigrant community and the African American community. So initially we were going to try to put something out during Black History Month. However, we decided that this topic is so important that we want to spend some time really developing it and perhaps making it into a series so that we can keep the conversation going. And so that decision was just, or that idea was just recently brought up because frankly, we would have really been rushing to just put a panel on. And is that what we really want to do? We want to be impactful. So that's kind of where we are, and so that committee will continue, and then we will bring our thoughts and plans back to the larger council fairly soon because we're going to be meeting even again next week. So that's where we are with that. So, any questions on that or?
No, and I just want to reiterate because, I know this is being recorded and I believe we're Facebook Live on this, so this is more so for community. This was actually requested. It was at the request of one of the faith-based leaders. And, he had said, hey, prime example of how the council can kind of pull together African-American and African immigrant to kind of pull us, in cohesion. But we also, at the time, I was like, oh, yeah, great idea. We can probably make it happen. But then also, forgetting that one, we still had seats to fill as far as staffing and just knowing we're in legislative session, don't want to necessarily, do a half job. And so, like I told Linda, we're Black 365 days of the year. So the fact that we just will not necessarily have it during that month, we can still use this as a tipping point or a kickoff of something greater to address some of the issues and concerns that both parties experience, and then how we go about going after some of these things together. So it could just be the tipping point of that and then being able to move forward.
Yes. So, and this topic is so important. I had to give testimony earlier today on a finance committee, and one of the representatives actually brought this conversation up. She said that she was at a school and she said, there were the 2 different groups and they didn't get along and blah, blah, blah. She asked, were we addressing that? So I was very happy to say that we understand that there might be a little tension, and but that we were, looking at it and working to see what we could do, within the scope of who we are. So I was happy to be able to say that. And this one is so key. I'm really excited that we are going to move forward and probably do a series on this. It's so needed. So that's it. And I'm kind of looking at my other computer too, because I wasn't able to print out the agenda.
Oh, so the next agenda item is, so with our Day on the Hill, and Amber is on. So Amber, can you talk a little bit about the Day on the Hill, and then one of the agenda items, or not one of the agenda items, one of the action items that we need to do is to approve Ashley DeBose's contract. But if you want to go ahead and talk a little bit about that.
Sure. Good evening, council members. So on the agenda, the next item is talking about a contract for Ashley DeBose. So for Day on the Hill, we just went live on social media, and it was also in the bulletin on Friday. And so please share that out to your networks. We will get that information sent to you all via email this week as well. So we have reached out to Ashley DeBose to provide our entertainment for Day on the Hill. She is prepared to do, and this is all in your board packet, the contract that has been drawn up, to do 3 song selections, one of them including the Black National Anthem, Lift Every Voice and Sing, the full version, all 3 verses, and 2 other original songs that she will professionally produce with an accompanist and record those tests. And so for all of that in the contract, it will cost us $2,000. Obviously, with Day on the of the other costs associated with a traditional in-person event are kind of not being utilized when it comes to space rental, other performance fees, printing, all those other things. And so we have more than enough money that's already in our budget to cover the cost for this contract. And so I would definitely love for the council to be able to approve this contract tonight so that we can get it finalized this week. Thank you.
No, thanks, Amber. And just for the council's sake, we did have this conversation in the executive committee last week, and we were all in agreement, but we can't make that decision. It has to be a full council approval. So if well, first and foremost, are there any questions for Amber before I call for a motion?
I do have one question. Did I hear she's going to do 1 live performance and then 2 recorded?
Oh, I'm sorry. All of them, it's going to be part of a pre-recorded program. So everything will be pre-recorded, professionally produced. Yes.
Produced. Okay, thank you.
Sorry. Thank you for that fine question.
Well, another question. Why do you stress the 3 stanzas for the Black National Anthem? Is there something behind that, or?
Yes.
I'll defer that to Chair Hughes.
So when you sing the Black National Anthem, you sing all 3 verses. And the last time it was done, only 1 verse was sung, and that's just like and not to but that's just like thinking about the regular national anthem and you're singing half of the song.
Right.
So we have to do James Weldon Johnson his due diligence and sing all 3 verses.
Well, if there's no question or comments, I will move that we vote on the contract, that we accept the contract.
Is there a second?
I second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstention? Motion carries. Thank you all. Next items are our standing items. So, and then we're going to move into the staff report. So, commissioner schedule, what we have talked about is we would continue with the commissioner schedules, but also open it up. So again, I know this was brought up by Dr. Lawson as a community member to say, what are we doing to make sure that organizations can come and present? I would still recommend that if there are organizations that want us to know what they're doing and want some type of support, and support more so elevating what they're trying to do, not necessarily financial support, but encourage them to reach out to Shakira, get on our agenda item. because when you're looking at actually reporting something to us, it doesn't necessarily have to be listed under the public comments. We would actually place you on the agenda and give you an allotted time frame. So just kind of keep that in mind. But until then, we still want to continue on with our commissioner schedule. We are looking at, for the month of March, our goal is that we would be able to have our, we want to bring back MDH if we can, because the big to do right now, as you all know, is there's skepticism around the vaccination. And should we have the vaccine? Should we not have the vaccine? What are the implications to Black and Brown folks, specifically us? And you know, what are some things that we need to be educated on? Why would we want to take it? And then what's the trepidation or the hesitation for us not to take it? And so we felt it's a great time, especially when they're trying to increase the number of vaccines that are actually given out. So, so that's one of the things in March that we want to do. April, as Linda had stated, what we would do for April is we would actually forego a regular you know, kind of a regular agenda for our meeting and turn it into this kind of moderated event. We would still take care of a little business at the beginning, and then the remainder of the meeting would be the moderation of the African immigrants and African Americans at the start of community conversations. Questions, comments, or concerns? All right, I'm going to move on, and the remaining agenda items is the staff report. So executive director, legislative, and outreach are how we have it in order.
Okay, perfect. I will go first as the agenda states. Oh, I'm so excited to report that the annual report was submitted on time. We had to have that in by January 15th. So again, thank you to the council members that helped, and a big shout out to Amber on our staff, who was instrumental in helping to really just drive that content. I mean, she was all over that. You know, I wanted to bow down to her. She was amazing. So thank you, Amber, and then thank you, council members that participated in reviewing, giving us feedback, and just coming to the table with great ideas. So thank you for that. We did get the 2-page summary done also. So I would love to show that at this time. Shakira, if you can bring that up, that'd be great. So the 2-page there is just a synopsis of the work, and it's just something that we can send out quickly, or when we get back in the office, we can hand this out as opposed to handing out the full report. So the first page, the paragraph, you probably can't see it. You will get this in your packet if you have not already gotten it. But the first paragraph just talks about, you know, the fact that there was a lot going on this year. And even though there were things that we had to address, we still were able to move forward. We powered through it. We have our little trusty map, our pie chart of who is the African Heritage Group. So it talks about the fact, you know, the African Americans, and again, the African immigrant community. Next page, please, Shakira. And then we just close it out with some of the great wins, you know, talking, you know, about some of the outreach that was done, some of the legislation that we supported and helped drive. So I'm really excited about this piece because it's something that can't just be handed out quickly. The annual report is for people who are really, really interested in the work. This is a document that we can send to people who might not want to read 15 pages or 14 pages of document. This is a quick and dirty, here's who we are, here's what we've done. And as we move forward with our branding, this is a powerful piece, a powerful tool that we'll be able to use to engage various individuals. So that is our 2-page summary. So again, thank you for the contributions from the council. So in terms of other things, the budget, I was the person that put in the chat the question about the budget. I sat in and had to testify at a budget finance committee meeting today. And one of the questions that came from a representative was, are you prepared for a budget reduction? And so he asked all three of the diversity councils. And so that question to me really struck a chord, because although we are prepared, we've been having conversations about maybe we'll spend the money, but now I'm thinking that until we know for certain that we won't be asked to do a budget reduction, I think that we should maybe formulate plans to spend the excess money, but hold on to it until we know for absolute certainty that we won't be called to reduce our budget. So that's kind of where we are with that. I did find out that we did not get the additional headcount. I had submitted a change request to get an additional headcount based on everything that's been going on. Although the budget looks better than it did, the state budget, it's, we're still out in a deficit. So I didn't get mine. The Latino Council didn't get their request either. But we will have a slight increase starting with the biennium, and that will be to cover the increase in office expense, as well as any increases in compensation. So it'll be a small increase to that. So let's see. So most of my time really has been spending either doing presentations. I've had meetings with the governor, lieutenant governor. I've been meeting with representatives. I've done a couple of private citizen group chats. I spent some time as a grant reviewer with, there was some additional COVID funding. And so they asked if I would be a reviewer. And of course I said yes, because I knew that some of those dollars could go to our groups. And I was one of the people involved in reviewing some of those grants. I was excited to do that. So that's it for the director's report. And I believe the legislative update is next on the agenda.
Any questions for Linda before we move to Theo? All right, Theo, take it away. Theo? Can we move to Amber then? For the sake of time, I don't want to, we can come back to Theo if he can't get on.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, no problem. So outreach, still in process. As you know, Theo just joined the council a couple of weeks ago. So I'm still in the process of kind of transitioning fully back into the outreach space, but still carrying some other work. I'm just a check-in. We're still doing statewide calls for Greater Minnesota partners. And if you know someone in Greater Minnesota that will be really good to be part of the space, please reach out to me. Our next meeting is a week from today. Still on the community recovery and resiliency work group, where a lot of the conversation has been focused on the vaccine and equitable distribution. And they've been doing a lot of work partnering with community leaders of different races and ethnicities to be able to speak to community about the vaccine. And so just from top of mind, I know that they are working obviously with Dr. Tomilo, also with Marcus Owens from ALF to talk specifically to folks in the African American community and to create community space to discuss the vaccine. They've also started to queue up presentations to really break down what the vaccine is and to really be able to answer anyone's questions about the development of the vaccine, the timeline for it, the structure, the actual biological structure, chemical structure of the vaccine, things like that, to really try to get that information out to community. And then also with the MNSCU Law Enforcement Education Task Force, this is the last month of the task force, and recommendations will be finalized by the end of this month. I've already touched on Day in the Hill. We are still moving forward with that, with the logistics, with the editing of the video process. And so, like I said, please share to your networks. We're going to premiere it on our Facebook page on February 24th. That's a Wednesday at 5:00 p.m. Since we have been talking a lot about building stronger relationships with the African community, I have connected with Assistant Commissioner Anissa Hajimumin, Indeed, and she has invited me to her monthly Immigrant and Refugee Affairs forums. And so hopefully I'll be able to connect her with Theo very soon as well, as continuing a relationship with her. And then the rest of my updates are just some quick updates on legislative things that we're still in the process of getting those things carried over into Theo's portfolio fully. But we are, since the session just started, doing a lot of work with education. Linda submitted a joint letter with the ethnic councils related to access testing. So this really affects our immigrant populations, to be able to postpone that in-person testing for English language learners. And so there were some changes that the Department of Education did to the testing window in as a result of that push. And then also the Teachers of Color bill is back. And I know Theo will talk more about that, but we have been getting involved in throwing our support there, as well as with ethnic studies. And so there's a revision process going on right now in social studies, and then also a bill that has been introduced as well. So we are definitely supporting those things. In addition, I spoke with Akula Lee Ellis from the Greater Twin Cities United Way to discuss how CMAH could support housing policies, as well as I know when we had our meeting with Representative Esther Agbaje, she also talked about her housing priorities as well. So that is also on our radar. So yeah, I can end it there if anyone has any questions.
Lots of good stuff that's going on. I have not forgotten you. I will have my video done this week. And I'll get it sent to you.
Council members too.
Yes, please. Send, if you have anything outstanding with Day on the Hill, please send it this week. Thank you.
I'll do it tomorrow.
Okay. All right. That's all.
Thank you. Theo, are you back?
Yes.
All right, sir, you are up.
All right. All right, Madam Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, and members. Today marks the end of my third week at CMAH. I'm very happy to say that my beginnings at CMAH and the transition to the legislative director role have gone well. Have gone very well, and the experience has been good for me. And that's thanks in large part due to my teammates, Linda, Amber, and Shakira. I just want to acknowledge and thank them for that. So Amber has gone through much of the ongoing legislative work. I will just give a few highlights on the Increased Teachers of Color Act. So this specific bill is in the House. The lead author is Representative Hassan, and the bill responds to the state's need for teachers of color. There's a severe shortage in teachers of color. And we have an abundance of data that shows the connection between the presence of teachers of color in schools and the academic success of our students. I mean, so the data actually shows that the recruitment and retention of teachers of color benefits all students, including students of color and American Indian students. So the council has supported the Increased Teachers of Color Act since it was first introduced in 2017. We've worked jointly with the 2 other ethnic councils and the American Indian Council in our work on the bill as part of a broader coalition. And this year, the 4 councils submitted joint testimonies in support of the bill at the hearings of the House Education Policy Committee and the House Education Finance Committees. And I'm very happy to report that the bill was voted out of the House Education Policy Committee, and it remains in consideration in the Education Finance Committee. The other aspect of my work these past several weeks here has been key update that I would want to give is on the legislative survey. So this is a project that is a sort of key first step in the work of expanding policy research and relationship building as we develop and drive our 2021 legislative agenda. Shakira's leadership has been very important in this project, and we're looking forward to renewing, to revising the content of the resume of the survey, and hopefully releasing it next week. So I would leave it there. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Good. No, thank you. Any questions for Theo?
Theo, real quick, I do have one question. On the Teachers of Color bill, do we have any bipartisan support? I know you mentioned that it is currently in the Education Finance Committee of the House, and I'm just wondering if we have any bipartisan support or if there is work to make that happen.
Yeah, thank you, Council Member, for that question. There is work towards that. In the House Policy Committee, the initial talks prior to my joining, I think the sort of sense that the coalition had was that there was going to be a lot more bipartisan support, and what ended up happening was, before the day before the hearing, actually we received some objections and actually some amendments, some counterpoint amendments were proposed. So I think that discussion needs to be had more. One of the sort of the challenging points that we have here is that the bill is explicit in its call for and it's sort of conceptualizing and identifying the problem of racism in our education system, and the issue of specifically, in this regard, there's a issue of anti-racist objectives, right, as part of the sort of values and objectives of the bill, and so there's some debates and some discussions about that for across party lines about changing that language or how we move forward with that. So there's some work to do there.
Thank you. And if there's ways that, the council can be helpful, please let us know, or let me know for sure.
Okay. Thank you.
And then I have a quick question. Have we been following kind of the Greater Minnesota Business Development, that grant funding? Have we been following that bill? It's I know it's going to be heard tomorrow. in the workforce committee, workforce finance and policy. So I don't know if we've been following that. So that just may be something, but I do know that, you know, we have two folks. One, you know, Representative Ruth Richardson, you know, is the chair of education, which is awesome. And then we have, you know, a previous council member, you know, Representative Noor, who actually is the chair of the Workforce and Business Development, Finance and Policy. So we may want to look at some of those areas. Sorry to turn my heater off, but we may want to look at some of those areas to see if any of them impact us. You know, for African heritage, and specifically, I think about, you know, where Carl is, and, you know, and other folks that are not necessarily in the Twin Cities, and just kind of keeping a pulse on that. So if we're not, we may want to kind of keep a pulse on where some of those efforts are going to. Any other questions or comments for Theo or Amber or even Linda? Well, again, will continue to say great work. We know we're not done, you know, with the session, but just kind of getting started. But it's good information to hear about what we're doing, especially about the teachers of color bill.
Chair Hughes, I do have one more thing to just
go ahead.
briefly mention, to put on the radar, that you all may know, but a month from yesterday, in a month from yesterday, the Derek Chauvin trial will begin. And so we just want to let you all know that the council is having conversations within the state system, and then definitely we'll be reaching out to community partners about how the community is readily prepared for that season that is going to be part of our community, and what's going to happen like in the physical space around the courthouse, things like that. So just as we are all part of the community in different ways, what are the things that we can do to just support our community during that process? And so that is going to start in March. And we will see how the next couple months will go. But just knowing that, you know, just want to let you all know that the state, including us, are a part of those conversations about that process and what's to come.
And just let us know, Amber, if there's specifics that that come up where we can actually kind of lean in to that, because we know it's gonna, for some, it's gonna re-trigger, you know, the trauma that already exists. For others, you know, anger is gonna come up. And for some, they're gonna celebrate it. I mean, let's just be real. And so I think, you know, wherever we can, you know, help and mitigate where necessary, you know, just keep us in mind of, you know, what our role should be when that does happen. So thank you for that. Any other announcements that we have? Well, with that, I'm gonna give you 8 minutes back. And if I could have a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Is there a second?
So second.
All right, we are officially adjourned. Thank you, thank you. You all have a fabulous week. Stay warm and stay safe.
You too. Thank you, Chair.
Bye.
See ya.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you.